Okay, this is a talk I've given before. I'm just updating it because this is an ongoing project we have with Environment Canada, assessing disposal at sea sites for whether they're dispersive or non-dispersive of materials, and also developing guidelines. Um, there's a bit of text in the first here. Canada regulates disposal at sea through through um, a permit system. And we're signed up to the London Convention and the following London Protocol. And so we have to report all our disposal at sea activities through this protocol. Um, it, it, it requires knowledge of what we've disposed of and the areas that it's disposed in and that sort of thing. I think I'll skip past now. The issue with disposal at sea is that sorry, I'm gonna have to close my Zoom stuff is overlapping my presentation here. Anyway, the issue with disposal at sea is that the sites are there's only a few of them on the whole coasts of Canada, and they're very far from where development is now taking place. Even this one up here at Prince Rupert is 40 miles away from the ports. And so you can imagine they're building ports here, and they have to ship the stuff 40 miles away multiple times per day for months or years as they build the port. So the proponents would like to make their own disposal sites, and they submit a license to Environment Canada to do that. And these licenses really vary in quality, and sometimes we just don't get the right science to be able to approve the permit. And so the idea here is that we need to produce the guidelines for the companies on what they need to submit to us. At the same time, during this project, we're assessing ourselves the existing sites. And for the last year, it's been two sites. One of them is the Point Grey disposal site off the coast of Vancouver here. If I go back a little bit, some of the things we provide to Environment Canada are things like the backscatter from a multi-beam sonar, the backscatter from the seabed, and that's shown here. And where the backscatter is bright or white, it tends to be kind of more consolidated sediment or rock. Where the background is kind of darker color, that tends to be more sediment. And so we can provide that information to them and say, we think that this is depositional, this is where the sediment ends up, and this is where it bypasses. We also take cores and we provide information about sedimentation rates. And this is basically showing the sedimentation rates over a time period of 35 years at this particular location. And we assess the models that proponents provide. Here, in this case, a proponent provided this model and compared it with the red actual measurements. And we're trying to say, look, they look pretty much the same. And this was during an environmental impact assessment. And when you look at that closely, in fact, the model results tend to, on average, overestimate current speeds, but they don't catch the big current speeds, the big sort of storm surges and big currents of the year. And the model results also completely fail to capture a certain direction of where sediment would be transported to. So, at first look, you think, well, that's a pretty good overlap for a model, but it doesn't really determine where the strongest currents are in the directions that they're heading in. Anyway, so the idea for part of our project here is to be able to design techniques that a proponent can use easily. And we do that by comparing our very sophisticated methods using an oceanographic research ship with what they would have, which would be a smaller vessel And in this case, we're comparing a simple instrument inside here to an $8,000 instrument versus this $100,000 deployment of these acoustic Dopplers and things. And the idea is to be able to pass off the sort of simpler technology that they can use from a smaller vessel. We don't completely, obviously this does not measure the same as all of this does. And so, so we're working towards that as well. And this is just an example of a deployment. You know, as I say, we have research ships and we have very capable staff and instrumentation to be able to do this ourselves. The definition we're using for whether a site is dispersive or not is one that we've borrowed from somewhere, from the Puget Sound dredge guidance, and we're testing that at this Point Grey disposal site. Basically, the definition is that if 1% of the current velocities are over 25 centimeters per second, then we're going to call that site dispersive. We're going to say 1% of the time there's strong currents and that sediment's going to move. It's pretty simplistic, but here at the Point Grey disposal site, you can see that there are some times during the year, this is the summer and this is the winter, that the currents are over 25 centimeters per second, but very few. So it's just a few points. So at Point Grey disposal site is considered to be non-dispersive. That means they can dispose of materials there that can be, that they're not worried about dispersing further through the environment. But, as further analysis, and this is partly what we're doing, is testing that definition. Even though they're non-dispersive, there are periods of time where the sediment concentrations shown by this intensity here go up and have these peaks. And so we investigate what it is that cause these sediment concentrations and whether it's actually resuspension and movement of the sediment. And that's a 40-page report that we sent, so I won't get into that too much. Now, moving on, the site that we're looking at that I'm just writing the final report for this year is the Sandheads disposal site here at the end of the Fraser River. And this is a slope into the Salish Sea here. There's all sorts of infrastructure here, including a port that's just been accepted for doubling basically this area. You can see for scale, that's a kind of a large ship there. So they're going to build this port out here. And there'll be a lot of dredging to be able to do that. There's the ferry terminal, which they dredge often. This channel is dredged. In fact, if this channel up to all these ports in the Fraser River, if this channel wasn't dredged, this river channel would close within months. And so it's super important that dredging is done, and all of the sediment for these things is deposited here, right at the mouth. So this is a really interesting area. This was the Point Grey one we did last year. And we've kind of outlined here these features that look like slope instabilities. So this is for another project that we're looking at basically the stability of the slope here. At this site, the early results are that, I'm showing it differently here. The current speeds, basically the top 1% of the current speeds up here at the 99 sort of percentile is above 25 meters per second. It's actually around 44 meters per second. So the 99th percentile is at 44 meters per second, meaning that this is the first actual dispersive site that we've measured in the last 5 years. Highly dispersive. And then we look closer to see, okay, are we seeing sediment resuspension? But we are seeing sediment peaks, large sediment peaks in this sort of orange color, but they seem to correspond more with with downward moving currents, and so are in fact caused by sediment plumes that are being deposited by the river. They come out over the surface of the Salish Sea, and every day they then deposit on the seabed. So we get lots of sediment movement in this area, but it seems to be a kind of natural deposition, not resuspension. But and this is hot off the press, really. While we were doing the surveys out here on the slope stability, actually, while we were doing them, we caught a big landslide here on the Fraser Delta. And here's the survey in 2020. And you can see these kind of active channels, like it's clearly an active area with moving sand waves and that sort of thing. And then this is the survey 2 years later. You'll see a big sort of gouge out of the slope here. And when you do the difference between the two maps, the gouge is actually 20 meters deep, and because of the vertical exaggeration, it's actually a couple of miles wide. So it's a pretty big, I don't want to say that. Yeah, anyway, it's a fairly big landslide there on the Fraser Delta. So here we are looking at sediment resuspension and in this area, and whether it's moving to the north or south and this and that due to currents. And yet I'm trying to quantify how it is that we can tell them every 10 years or so there's actually going to be a huge landslide in this area that causes it all to move out into the center of the straight up Salish Sea anyway. The results, we produce public annual reports, which Environment Canada are very keen to release to the public. So we write them in an easy, accessible sort of way. We work with several First Nations on this, and so they really want to maybe even take some leadership role in this work. We provide this guidance document for proponents, which needs updating now, but we released it a couple of years ago. And also, this work forms part of Canada's submission to the London Convention. This is basically what Canada is doing in this field, the innovative side of things. Environment Canada would like to increase this work. We don't currently really have the capabilities internally to do that, but it's always something I'm considering. I can personally model, but we're sort of overloaded. We received some new major capital in 2023 that'll help us with this work quite a lot. So if we do decide to kind of increase the support to Environment Canada, we can. There's ideas for beneficial use of the sediment rather than just depositing it there. One of the ideas is, can we protect the coastlines around this low-lying area, and particularly here in Boundary Bay, by using the sediment to build living dikes, nature-based coastal protection. And that's another project that we're involved in, and or we're leading actually, with NRC. We're leading the fieldwork component of that, and also in discussions with Environment Canada about beneficial use of sediment. And finally, I wanted to say that where we see this going a little bit is guidance for seabed mining, because this defining the guidelines, coming up with techniques to measure dispersion and transport of sediment leads perfectly into the issues that industry is facing in seabed mining, and they've come to us about this, and it's actually the same group of people. It would be Environment Canada, possibly us as seabed experts, and the London Convention. So that's basically where it went this year, and thank you very much.